Well, let's bring Lowy Institute's Director of International Security, Sam Roggeveen, now to talk about the deal that was signed yesterday, as well as the diplomatic fallout that seems to be taking place too. Sam, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So I just do want to start with that, because the French have been seething overnight. We've played some grabs earlier in the show. Do you believe it was worth breaking up this deal that we had with the French?
Ultimately, I think the best news out of yesterday was that the deal with France was cut short, I think, and nothing, of course, to do with the relationship with the French. That's an unfortunate side effect of this decision. But the project looked to be in clear trouble over budget. It was late, and it wasn't going to meet Australia's strategic requirements. So therefore, I think that was the best news out of yesterday. The news that troubled me really is that we've pulled ourselves out of one really difficult and complicated project, and now it looks like we're diving into one that, if anything, is going to be more complex and demanding.
So what do we do in the meantime, Sam? I mean, you make the point there. These subs aren't going to be here until the latter half of next decade. What do we do in the medium term?
Well, the government's already announced that it's going to be embarking on a really deep modernisation of the existing Collins-class platforms. So essentially, what will come out of that are more or less new submarines, very modern submarines, and they're very good boats already, by all accounts. The problem is, I guess, for the government that doesn't increase our numbers. And so what looks to be happening in the interim is that the government has made other announcements about closer ties to the United States, more joint exercising, the basing and rotation of forces through Australia. And there's been some discussion also in the media about the possibility that US submarines would be based in Perth. I haven't seen any confirmation of that yet, but that's an interesting one to watch as well.
Yeah, Peter Dutton spoke about that from the United States this morning, that was something that he'd be pursuing, having that basing situation in the NT anyway. We'll see if that ends up being confirmed. But as for the nuclear subs, I mean, is there a chance, Sam, that there's some kind of conflict with China before they come online?
Well, there's always a chance. I mean, the thing that needs to be emphasised is that the likelihood of conflict between the United States and China, and a conflict that would ensnare Australia, is still very, very low. I think what gets analysts like me exercise is the fact that it's coming up off a low base.
Right.
And what we're witnessing is a really dramatic shift of military and strategic power away from our ally and towards a nation that really doesn't share most of our interests. Now, in a sense, that's quite natural. China is a massive, massive country, and we shouldn't expect that China will be prepared to stand for being a secondary strategic power in its own region when it's potentially the biggest economic power, not just in its region, but in the world. It's natural for great powers to do that. Nevertheless, the transition from a situation that favoured us, where Americans had what the analysts call unipolarity, to a situation of bipolarity or multipolarity, that has to be negotiated peacefully. And that transition is extremely difficult and delicate, and that's what we're in the middle of right now.
Yeah. By giving us their technology, Sam, what does the US want out of us going forward?
Important question. So, I mean, defence deals, ordinary defence deals, don't generally come with specific strings attached about obligations to, the country that you're buying the weapons from. But of course, this is no ordinary defence or weapons sale. So the United States has shared this technology with precisely one other country in its history, and that's the United Kingdom. So this is a very special deal. And you do have to, I think, read between the lines and say, well, that there is now a heightened expectation, implicit, but heightened expectation, that were the United States ever to come into a confrontation with China, that we would take America's side.
I mean, we'd probably do that anyway, right?
That is a big question. A lot of assumptions made in that regard. But I think the pattern of the last few years has been that Australia has been very willing to demonstrate its bona fides on the alliance in military theatres that are far away, Afghanistan and Iraq, for instance. But we've been a little more reluctant to do that in our own region. So, for instance, we haven't up to this point conducted freedom of navigation operations, close into the islands that China has claimed in the South China Sea. And a few years ago, under the Trump administration, when there was some talk about the United States basing long-range missiles in Australia, that idea was scotched very quickly by Prime Minister Morrison at the time. You'd have to think, though, that the atmosphere has changed now to the point where that sort of call wouldn't be dismissed right now.
All right. Sam Roggeveen, interesting conversation from the Lowy Institute. Thank you, Sam, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.